Bats can be found throughout Florida, including the Keys. Transportation-related interactions occur when bats use infrastructure for shelter, protection, and breeding, termed roosting. Types of transportation structures that bats roost in include bridges, culverts, and pipes. Suitable roosting in bridges includes narrow vertical gaps and joints. Observation and research on bridges indicate bats are more likely to use bridge structures when they are made of concrete and located near or on river corridors, waterways, or in proximity to woodlands. Culverts are structures that pass under roadways. Culverts can be single-span or multi-span and can vary in type, including box, pipe, arch, and custom-made. In culverts, bats can be found on or behind segment joints near the seal materials and other connection points, as well as areas with deterioration that creates crevices or cave-like spaces. Bats may also roost in pipes such as scuppers, weep holes, downspouts, and abandoned utility piping attached to structures. The purpose of this video is to provide general how-to guidelines on bat exclusion within bridges, culverts, and pipes. This video does not discuss buildings. To learn more about exclusions for buildings, go to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission website. A bat roost inspection is performed on transportation structures such as bridges and culverts to determine presence. To aid in this process, FDOT has created a bat inspection form and inspection video that provides guidance on indicators of presence. FDOT's Bat Exclusion Handbook and inspection video are located on FDOT's Office of Environmental Management website. Cues for identifying bat presence include bat body oil or urine that looks like long vertical lengths of brown staining on structures, bat droppings or guano accumulations on the ground or structural components. Insects remains, such as wings and legs, can be found scattered on the ground. Smell. Bats produce a strong ammonia smell and noise. Bat vocalizations, such as high-pitched squeaking or chirping, can be heard if the roadway is not too loud. When the presence of bats cannot be identified through these indicators, an acoustic survey can be conducted. It is a non-invasive method for detected presence or probable absence of bats. This is done through recording and analyzing echolocation calls using a bat detector. Calls can be analyzed to determine presence of bats, the species, and approximate number of individuals. When bats are confirmed to be present in a structure and could be affected by construction or maintenance activities, exclusion is the usual path forward. Exclusion is a conservation management activity that allows for bats to exit a structure unharmed and denies them re-entry for a pre-established period of time, while construction or maintenance work occurs. Bat exclusion can be implemented once approval is provided by the Regional FDOT District's Environmental Management Office or Permitting Office, as coordination or consultation may be required with federal or state agencies. Coordination with the state agency, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, is a best management practice for any exclusion activities for species not listed federally. All bats are protected under state law. These laws are written under the General Prohibitions 68A-4.001, Take of Mammals 68A-29.002, and Nuisance Wildlife 68A-9.010 within Florida administrative codes. All bat species are protected under Florida's wildlife laws. Users should always confirm current version of the laws during project development. If a federally listed bat species or species proposed for listing is identified, consultation is required with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Coordination or consultation are conducted by the regional FDOT District Environmental or Permitting Office. Note for large projects or those with exclusion access issues, a Bat Exclusion management plan should be developed. The first step to installing an exclusionary device is to identify how bats are accessing, emerging from, or entering into the structure. This is done through conducting an emergence or re-entry assessment. The purpose of the assessment is to 1. Observe and record the locations that bats are using to access the structure, either enter at sunrise or exit at sunset, and 2. To mark those areas for the purpose of informing the exclusion approach. An emergence or re-entry assessment both involve at least one biologist watching the structure to identify the locations where bats are leaving or entering the roost. Multiple observers may be needed for larger structures with multiple areas where bats may be roosting. An emergence assessment should begin approximately 30 minutes before sunset, continuing until roosts are no longer visible from natural light or when all exit points have been identified. A re-entry assessment is conducted 30 minutes before sunrise, continuing through sunrise, or until all the entry points have been identified. Either method may be used. Once the access points have been identified, installation of the exclusion devices can begin. Narrow gaps as small as 0.5 to 0.25 inches should be reviewed and foam backer rod or another type of foam tubing installed to block bat entry. One-way exit devices are installed into the openings to the roosting areas and are typically hard tubing such as PVC pipes. These must be at least 2 inches in width and extend at least 10 inches from the exit point. The best way to ensure bats can exit but not re-enter is to aim the tube either straight down or at a downward angle. For large bat roosts, the use of multiple exit devices is recommended. For entry or exit points that are larger than a cone, tube, or pipe opening, use more than one, putting them side by side. At the exterior junction of the backer rod, or similar material to be used to block the gaps and install the one-way exits, apply only a small amount of expanding foam sealant to secure the one-way exit and keep the exclusion material in place. The expanding foam sealant should never be sprayed in an area where blocking material has not yet been installed or where bats may come into contact with it while still wet. Another exclusion method for voids includes the use of exclusion netting specifically designed for bats. Exclusion netting is only to be used in specific circumstances and if recommended, and it must be installed by a bat professional. Bats can and do use culverts to roost. For culverts that contain gaps, cracks, joints, or crevices, exclusion begins the same as described for narrow gaps. Once the bats are excluded from all gaps, crevices, and joints within the culvert, a flexible wire mesh curtain can be installed to keep bats out and to facilitate work activities within the culvert. Curtains are to be installed at both sides of the culvert. Care should be taken not to trap bats within the culvert during curtain installation. Culverts can present a number of site-specific challenges, including varying sizes and water movement scenarios. Therefore, consult with bat professionals and district EMO staff. Curtain exclusion is only to be used for culverts. This method should not be used for bridges or other structures. Bats can squeeze through small openings and have been found in pipes such as structure weep holes, downspouts, scuppers, ducts, vents, and other drainage or stormwater features. Exclusion can be accomplished using a one-way device secured with an adhesive compound. Take care not to allow the adhesive into the pipe where a bat might encounter it and get stuck. For larger pipes, use more than one exit device in combination with mesh or screening. Proper safety precautions must be taken when completing bat exclusions in transportation structures. Bats should never be physically handled. Personal protective equipment, including hard hat, mask, gloves, eye protection, and appropriate fall protection, if applicable, must be worn. Accessibility is a primary issue when considering bat exclusion. High bridges or bridges over water or rail may require specialized equipment. Examples of equipment that may be required include scaffolding, snooper trucks, boom lifts, inspection platforms, and other aerial lifts. Fall protection includes harnesses on devices or vehicles used to elevate individuals, such as boom lifts or snooper trucks. When using ladders, a spotter on the ground at the base of the ladder should always be present to assist with ladder stability.
Beyond physical access, there may be issues associated with obtaining permissions to access and work if the location is outside of FDOT right-of-way. Additional coordination and permitting may be required if the structure is located over a navigation channel, railroad tracks, or a third-party right-of-way.
To prevent damage to the structure while conducting an exclusion, avoid drilling into the structure or using screws and nails, as this may require coordination with FDOT's District Structural Office and Environmental Contamination Office for older structures that may contain asbestos or lead paint. Exclusion activities may not be conducted between April 16th and August 14th. This period is considered the maternity season for bats. Young bats, referred to as pups, remain in the roost while adults forage. The young are cared for by their mothers until they can fly on their own. Excluding bats from transportation structures before pups can fly and forage will result in mortality. Care should be taken in the weeks leading up to and just following the maternity season. If there are signs of maternity activities, such as large numbers of bats and young, earlier or later into the season, contact the district EMO permit office or seek guidance from Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. Temperature must be considered when conducting bat exclusions. Exclusions may only be conducted when the low temperature is forecasted to remain above 50 degrees Fahrenheit for 4 consecutive nights. Use the U.S. National Weather Service website to check the forecast prior to conducting an exclusion. The installed bat exclusion devices should be monitored for a minimum of 4 consecutive days or nights for which the low temperature is forecasted by the U.S. National Weather Service to remain above 50 degrees Fahrenheit. This involves at least one biologist watching the structure to identify bats leaving or re-entering the roost. Multiple observers are needed for larger structures, requiring additional personnel. Emergent assessments should begin approximately 30 minutes before sunset, continuing until roosts are no longer visible from natural light. Re-entry assessments should begin 30 minutes before sunrise, continuing through sunrise. Some bats may refuse to leave a structure in the first few nights after installation of exclusion materials. These individuals will eventually exit the structure. It is not uncommon for some individuals to remain in the structure for more than 4 days. So, thorough monitoring must be completed prior to any proposed construction or maintenance activities. Once it is determined that all bats have been excluded from the structure, the intended work activities may commence. Bat absence is confirmed once bats are no longer emerging from the structure and vocalizations inside the structure have ceased. Exclusion materials may be removed after the work activities cease unless the structure is scheduled for demolition. To ensure bats remain excluded from structures scheduled for full demolition, consultation by the parties responsible for installing the exclusions with the construction contractor should be conducted to ensure any formal roosting crevices or gaps are not left open overnight, especially if the demolition is done over multiple days. Additional monitoring of the structures should be conducted over the period of demolition to ensure the materials are functioning as intended and bats are successfully excluded. If gaps in the exclusion material are observed in the subsequent site inspections, then repairs to the exclusion materials must be immediately performed, and an additional 4 consecutive nights of monitoring during favorable weather must be performed. Additional monitoring should also be conducted after severe weather events to ensure exclusion materials remained in place and were not damaged. It is possible for excessive rain and/or wind, as well as other wildlife, to dislodge exclusion materials that may allow bats to re-enter the structure. While not required for mitigation, incorporating the installation of bat boxes can be considered to assist in the relocation of bats during roost exclusion and reduce the desire for bats to try to regain access to the structure. Artificial roofs should be installed within the vicinity of the existing structure, but outside of the proposed work limits where construction activities may disturb roosting bats. Measures should focus on solutions that fit within the parameters of the normal function of the transportation structure's operation and maintenance. There are a variety of designs and ready-made houses available. Bat Conservation International evaluates bat houses for effectiveness and is a useful source for designs. If maintenance construction activities to structures with roosting bats are temporary, the exclusion materials may be removed to allow bats to re-enter the structure when construction or maintenance activities cease. Care should be taken when removing any exclusion materials to ensure no externally roosting bats are attached during the removal process. Injury or mortality may occur if bats are on the materials that are physically removed. Additionally, the individuals conducting the removal should ensure all materials are properly disposed of and not left on site. These materials can be environmentally hazardous, especially if allowed to enter waterways and/or storm drains. This concludes our video on how to properly conduct bat extractions within transportation structures. Major deviations of this guidance should be vetted with your district's Environmental Management Office. Thank you.